Thank you, Chief Phil, for offering such a beautiful opening prayer to begin our time together this evening. Indeed, we are at the beginning of something very special. I'm A. Martinez. On behalf of the Red Nation Celebration Institute, I'd like to welcome all of you who are tuning in. This is the very first episode of the inaugural season of Red Nation Television's original online film and conversation series. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, making us one of the longest standing Native cultural and arts organization in the world. And we hope that you will join us in supporting our good work by making a donation this evening. We'll be sharing with you how to do that throughout the program. Red Nation Celebration Institute was founded in 1995 by my co-host for the evening, my longtime friend and colleague, Joanelle Romero. I love Joanelle. Joanelle made a groundbreaking film a few years ago called American Holocaust. When it's all over, I'll still be Indian. Her choice of that word, Indian, is controversial and brings to mind the delicacy and importance of describing groups of people accurately and respectfully in a single word. To the degree that it's ever necessary to do so, many prefer indigenous as a descriptive, or the beautifully encompassing primal power of human beings. I find that when I'm discussing recent seismic events like Standing Rock, my own default is to describe those in the resistance as the people. But that aside, American Holocaust is a wicked truth. It happened. It's been happening. It's a wicked truth about this country that can no longer be ignored. This film was an early voice in addressing that truth, and we're going to watch it right now. Enjoy, and we'll be back after to discuss it with our wonderful panelists. This is American Holocaust.
issue of the Holocaust, I think, is really ironic because so much literature has been expended in the pursuit of exposing Hitler and the Holocaust and the terrible tragedy that occurred with the Jews, where 6 million people perished. What most people in this country fail to realize is that the model for that was here, was the treatment of our Indian people, was the model for Hitler. And he said so. He wrote it down. And he said that the prison camps here were the model for the prison camps. Also, the whole notion of turning the people against themselves within the prison camps and keeping them busy with each other so that they couldn't escape or didn't have other ideas was also born here, and he copied it. He thought it was a very good plan, and he really admired Andrew Jackson. So it's a little known part of history, but it is a reality, and nobody's ever really addressed it. Nobody's ever really talked about the Holocaust here. I mean, there were conservative figures, 19 million Indian people living in North America, 19 million. And by 1970, there were 260,000. They didn't move to Hawaii, or they didn't go to Sweden. Where did they go? They are gone. They were gone. Killed. Murdered. But 19 million people. Well, that's not a Holocaust.
I feel that this country doesn't understand historically what happened to its indigenous people. They see it on television and they read it in the books, but they really don't see it in the practical sense.
It points directly toward the racism of this country, of the white person, of the dominant society, of manipulation of the environment, of its people. To us, to the white man, we're just kind of like a cactus on the trail. You chop it away and get it out of the way so you can keep walking down the trail and seeing what the beauty you want to see. I think that one of my goals is to have our people look at themselves and stop dancing for white people and saying we're so pretty. I want us to say, look what you've done to us. Look what you've taken. Look at the beauty we had and still have to offer you. And stop treating us like subhuman human beings, because we don't deserve it and we don't need it.
For more than 500 years, American Indian people have been subjected to the ever-changing whims of the white man, who with sword in one hand and Bible in the other, swept across this land like a plague of locusts. What the people of the United States did not know was that their so-called enlightened nation was setting an example that would be followed in the 20th century by some of the worst butchers known to man, including Adolf Hitler. In his biography of Hitler, John Toland wrote, Hitler's concept of concentration camps, as well as the practicality of genocide, owed much, so he claimed, to his studies of United States history, and he often praised to his inner circle the efficiency of America's extermination by starvation and uneven combat of the red savages who could not be tamed by captivity. In their efforts to deal with the original inhabitants of this land, the European and then the American governments tried many different approaches. First, they tried subjugation. Then, when that failed, extermination. And when that wasn't totally successful, then came the reservations. and the land set aside for reservations in the 1800s was generally the most worthless land that could be found. Indians were relocated to these lands for as long as the grass grows and the rivers flow, unless, like in the Black Hills of South Dakota, valuable mineral resources are discovered on that land, and then the Indians are uprooted and relocated again.
The enrollment issue originated with when the government set up reservations. They signed up the Indians who were assigned to that particular reservation. They took a roll, as it were, at that time. Everybody was given a number so that they could identify the people who were reservation-bound Indians, because reservations and the inception were no more than glorified concentration camps. Indians were forbidden to leave them. And so you were given your tribal identity right then and there by the United States government.
It's another labeling system. There probably was an importance for it at the time, to find out numbers of indigenous people. And now it's almost being used against us. And for a lot of the Native American, Indian, whatever you want to call them, don't have a number to rely on, and for assistance, for even being considered a part of us, of the rest of us. They're put out, put aside, pushed away, and saying, you don't qualify, even though they may have a higher blood quantum than myself. And so I don't see it where it's being used in a way to be beneficial to us. It's just a way of being controlled again.
When you take prisoners, you write down their names and give them a number. That way you can keep track of them. And it's a very simple process. It's done in every war. It's done in every time one group of people conquers another group of people.
When I was younger, I was extremely angry about it. Now there's a sadness because things will never be the way that they used to be. It will never happen. So I just try and work as hard as I can to retain as much of my culture for myself, for future generations. But I'm never going to let them forget it. I don't think that this country will ever really heal itself until it answers the question of what it did to its indigenous people.
But confining Indians to reservations wasn't enough for many hawkish political and military leaders. Nothing short of total annihilation of the American Indian was acceptable in their eyes. Colonel John Chivington, known as the Fighting Parson and head of the 1st Colorado Cavalry, told a gathering of church deacons, "It is simply not possible for Indians to obey or understand a treaty. To kill them is the only way we will ever have peace and quiet." Later that same year, he led 700 soldiers on a surprise raid against a peaceful band of Cheyenne who were camped along Colorado's Sand Creek. Just before the dawn attack, he told his men, "Kill them all, children as well. Nits make lice." 400 people, mostly women, children, and elders, were murdered that day, as an American flag and a white flag of peace flew high over the camp's tallest teepee. As tribe after tribe was successfully depopulated, demoralized, and imprisoned on reservations, political winds shifted and extermination began to fall out of favor. Assimilation became the new byword of a concerned citizenry, and so an educational model to make Indians into imitation white men was proposed. The centerpiece of this plan was the Indian boarding school system designed by former Indian fighter Captain Richard Pratt. His motto, "Kill the Indian, save the man." was the central philosophy which destroyed Indian families and societies by sexually violating and brainwashing generations of Indian children into believing that their language, culture, clothing, and their very identity was evil. In actuality, the effect of the boarding schools was far more devastating and far-reaching than its creators ever conceived. It is now recognized that the boarding school experience has affected multiple generations of Indian people with such symptoms as alcoholism, drug abuse, incest, sexual abuse, and other major dysfunctions. Almost every Indian person alive today, no matter how successful, carries the residual psychological scars of yesterday and must grapple with the question, when it's all over, will I be Indian or white?
I grew up with the signs, no Indians or dogs allowed, and had to abide by those signs, not being able to go into places. And so from the very time I was very small, I think that I learned that you had to be strong in order to be an Indian.
How do I define an Indian? That's a political question that's very difficult to deal with. Traditionally, the Apache people didn't have a definition of who was Indian.
I'm the only person that doesn't claim to be American Indian, because American Indian is only 500 years old, but I was here before Columbus. So that doesn't make me American Indian. So I'm a non-Indian, nor I'm a non-American. Today, America, nobody knows what America is, or nobody knows what Indian means. So the only Indian that was defined by Congress is primitive or North American Indian. But then what is primitive? Anything that grows by itself is primitive, but when you put a fence around it, it's not primitive anymore. So then what is Indian? 93rd Congress changed its tune to what is Indian to who is Indian, so only half would be regarded as Indian. So American Indian cannot be defined as a nation. So American Indian, as long as we're labeled American Indian will be written never, never, and never be recognized as a nation.
So I think there's another way to look at that whole issue of what is Indian and what, the word or what we call ourselves is en Dios, meaning in God, that the people that they encountered were godlike, were very pure. And that en Dios became Indio, which became Indian. We have lost so much blood, and so many of us have died over the name Indian, that he says we've earned it. And we've earned that name with our blood.
I find the word Native American offensive to me. It's like, here's a nation of people that enslaved my people, stole my culture, tried to beat it out of me, and now they're going to include me. And I don't mean to sound unpatriotic, I'm a veteran, but they're saying now you can call yourself a Native American. I'm not, I'm an Aboriginal indigenous person.
I know I'm not white. I tried to be white, and I couldn't do it, and they didn't want me. Because I'm not white. I'm culturally Apache. I relate to my tribe closer than any other human beings on this world.
I know who I am, and I know my blood. I don't have to read in a book that somebody wrote at some fort somewhere long back in history to tell me who I am. And I don't have to have a number to tell me that I am an Indian.
Well, to me, I don't care if I'm 164th or 1/300 and whatever, or 1/1000 something. There's a lot of our little kids that are Oh, there could be 4 different tribes. And, well, now, which one of these means more to you? There's one of them there that means a lot more to you than the others, I feel.
Being Indian is not being part. If you're Indian, you're Indian. You're not just, a part white or a part Hispanic or anything else. You're Indian because that's how you feel. When you grow up and you have an Apache mother or Comanche or whatever, if she's 15 tribes, but she sings the lullabies to you of whatever tribe she knows, then you're going to feel the dominance of that in your life. It's kind of like that's going to be your choice.
As Indian people, we have the responsibility to care for our own, to care for our young, take them in no matter what blood they have. If they're ours, they're ours. That's a simple answer. You can't say, you aren't enough of me, so find your own way. That's not what it's all about. We brought them into this world.
So what happens when this young guy comes up to the drum and he looks black and he says, my father is such and such and my mother is such and such and I'm Indian? What do you say? And I want to learn the song. What do you say to him? And he said, you better make a place on the drum for him and have him sit because he's one of us.
My mother was only half Apache, but that's always, I've never felt like I was anything but Apache. We've always, because my father was always singing and always teaching us about Apache, so I felt like we were Apaches, and that's all we were. And I think my mother felt that way too, because she never said anything about being white. It was always Apache. Everything she did, she made dresses and she beaded and made purses and all kinds of things, and she made those, and they were Apache. And that's what she wanted to teach us, to dance Apache, to sing Apache. And that's what I'd like to give to my children, to help them to realize that they're Apache. And one of the things we went to was something in Oklahoma, and there were all these people in their minks, and their tuxedos and their formals and everything. And my daughter asked me, she said, Mama, how do you feel? You're wearing an Apache dress, and all these other people are all dressed up. I said, I feel like I'm the most beautiful person here. I said, because I'm Apache. And that's the way I feel.
Somebody asked me one time, what is it like being a Native person, and especially being a person of mixed blood? It's a constant explanation of my culture. I mean, I'm totally amazed at how much the non-Indian population knows about my existence.
As far as tribal identity is concerned, this is, for many years, back in the times when this hatred and hostility about American Indians in our own country was so prevalent that many people who left the reservations, Native people who left the reservations, hid their tribal identity so that they could be accepted by the dominant society. Because Indians were being relocated to the cities by the thousands to empty the reservations so that the termination policy could be effected, we suddenly had an explosion of urban Indians. The urban Indians oftentimes did not, once they had children, they would not enroll them with their own tribe. They didn't take the time or the effort, or, as one Indian said, what's it worth to be an Indian?
In the 1950s, the federal government instituted yet another new Indian policy known as termination. The purpose of this policy? To eliminate tribal governments and tribal lands, along with any vestige of tribal identity, so that the Red Nation would become part of America's great melting pot. A major part of this program launched another relocation campaign which offered training, jobs, and a part of the American dream to any Indian who would leave the reservation and move to the city. What most Indians who signed up for the relocation program found instead was isolation, alienation, and further disintegration of their culture and identity. And so this policy became one more chapter of the American Holocaust. But relocation is not a dead policy of the distant past. It is an active policy of the present day. By order of the U.S. government, more than 12,000 Navajo people have been forced in the last 25 years to move from their traditional homelands on Big Mountain in Arizona, to be resettled one more time on land nobody wants, contaminated desert bottomlands of the Rio Puerco, downstream from the largest radiation spill in American history. The reason for relocation this time? The discovery of one of the largest coal deposits ever found in North America. The most recent law which strengthened and accelerated this forced removal was introduced by Senator John McCain and signed into law in 1998.
Because as Indians, we're not pulling together. We're so fragmented, and still that's the white way, to break us up, make us weak. And we are strong, but we're so far apart from one another and can't come together on the issues. Would just as soon go their way and say, oh, you take care of it.
We exclude, cut out, don't let in. Where is that tradition? What's that tradition from? It's from Europe. So we're being good white people when we do that, when we're being exclusive, but we're not being what our ancestors were.
This world loses 6 million Jewish people, and the world feels sorry. The world loses 50 million indigenous people in this continent, and the world doesn't care.
It's ongoing. And I say that with a great deal of sadness because a lot of the times the Holocaust is perpetuated by our own. And it's not necessarily the outsiders. I mean, we've learned our lessons well. We've learned how to be divisive. We've learned how to take the tools of colonization and use them on ourselves. And we've done that very well, thank you.
The Holocaust goes on today. People are dying all over the world. There are Geronimos all over the world fighting for their people. And dying sad.
All I know is all these years of what Western civilization has tried to do to indigenous people that we still endure.
I'm proud of my people, and I'm proud of who I am and what they did and what they stood for. You survived. We've always survived, and we're still surviving.
To wash my spirit up to the mountain, to purify my soul, and dance to the sun, to pray for the ones who can't help themselves no more. children are sacred. When it's all over, I'll still be Indian. No matter what you do, I'll still be strong. When the smoke cleared, I was still dancing. When the smoke cleared, I was still standing. And General Sheridan said, the only good Indian is the dead one, and the white man digging up our grave. Put us on a reservation, took all land away. They say no Indians are dogs allowed, and the white man's dancing on our graves. They brought Jesus to us, they brought us the cross, they brought us hunger and disease. Ah, this American Holocaust. Try to take my medicine, try to take my soul, try to take my song, and the white man's still dancing on my When the smoke cleared, I was still dancing. When the smoke cleared, I was still standing. And America said, the only good Indian is the dead one, and the white man.
Thank you, Joanelle. We're gonna, it's so moving, I almost don't know what to say. We're gonna introduce our distinguished group of panelists now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us and being part of this very special series that we're bringing to you. I haven't watched the movie for quite some time, so it always affects me in different ways from 20 years ago when I made it to thinking about where I was back then to right now. And still, we're still here. That's all I'm going to say right now. I want to introduce some of my most dearest, precious friends that I've known forever, and some new. And we're going to have this great dialogue. And I encourage you out there to type in some questions so you're part of this conversation, and we'll try to get to everybody. I'd like to introduce the English words don't even come up for me, but I'd like to introduce Orrin Lyons. He is a very special soul to me. He has been with us with Red Nation Celebration Institute from the beginning. He is a leader in our community. I respect you so much, Orrin, and for all the work, all the sacrifices you made to keep our voice and our image in the forefront of the world, not just the film industry, but the world. You're the faith keeper, the Iroquois Nation, Confederacy, and you used to play lacrosse. Your film won at our festival, and I just want to welcome Oren Lyons.
Yeah, welcome, Oren. And I got to say, Oren, you're looking good, man. You're looking really good in that light today. You got some wonderful relief in your face with that shadow cast on half. You just look good, brother. I want to introduce Joanne Shenandoah. I got to spend a little time with Joanne last year at the film festival's award ceremony. We had a really good time. Good to see you, Joanne. This lady is a Grammy Award winner. She's among Native America's most celebrated musicians and lecturers. She's an ambassador of peace, beautiful human rights and earth rights advocate. And she is a 2019 Emmy nominee for the PBS special Native America. So welcome, thank you for being here, Joanne, and we'll be talking to you momentarily.
And our other guest is Phillip Whiteman Jr. And he's the head chief of the Northern Cheyenne. He is the creator of the medicine wheel model of natural horsemanship, and he is the co-founder of Yellowbird Lifeways, and a very, very dear friend. And Lynette Tubals, his wife, is on our board of directors, and both of them together are just, I just want to thank you for your leadership as well, Phillip and Lynette, because you have also paved the way and have been doing the work. You're on the ground doing the work, and sometimes, you know, a lot of us aren't recognized, but I want to take this time to recognize you and Lynette for everything that you do.
And I'm going to thank you again, Phillip, for the beautiful prayer at the top. That was that set the tone. Gabe Gallanda is the managing lawyer of an Indigenous rights law firm that's based in Seattle. This is Gallanda Broadman. Gabe is known for his extraordinary work in bringing attention to the tactic of tribal disenrollment, the devastating effects it can have. And Gabe, brother, you look really good in that blue shirt. I'm forgive me for starting to wax all appreciative of how good everybody looks, but if you got that light coming in your window and that beautiful shirt, you look good, man. Look forward to talking to you, Gabe, about the work that you are doing.
Thank you.
But you're welcome. But before we start with these panelists, I'm going to start with you, Joanelle. I haven't seen American Holocaust in a while myself, and it was so compelling. It's so emotional. I was just reading just this last night, actually, about the way that Hitler used the template that America provided in the extermination of the indigenous as a means of his final solution to take care of the Jewish people. It's so astonishing to me how few people in our daily lives, at least in urban America, are aware of that connection. I just think that the film is so compelling in that regard. People speak to it so beautifully, the people you chose to bear witness. I want to thank you again for bringing into being, and just ask you, what was your impetus? What made you do the work of making this film 20 years ago?
Well, I was in New Mexico, and personally, I've always been targeted because I am Apache, Dene, and Paiute, and I'm relative of Pawnee and Powahki and Southern Ute and Lakota and Iroquois. So and Spanish Jew, so Spanish Sephardic Jew. So having both of those in my blood, right? Having all of those in my bloodline. You know, my family, they came from Spain on my mom's side and moved in to New Mexico, and we have our land in Pecos, but I don't want to go into that whole history, but I just felt as a mother and now a grandmother especially, that I needed to make this movie about who's Indian and who's not. And growing up all my life, I've always heard that, you know, the myth about Hitler learning what he did to our Jewish people by watching what he did to our native peoples. So I went to the Wiesenthal Center and worked with Paul Hamburg and dug up all, because as a responsible filmmaker, I want to see the truth. I want to know that it's not a myth or just gossip, right? So I went in and I dug up the truth, and it was his blueprint, you know, by watching what America did to our indigenous people. So it is a fact. And it's, you know, dehumanizing, you know, to be dehumanized in this way for, you know, 530 years is just enough is enough. And so this film, we didn't have money to make the film, so it's a little dated. So I pulled it together, and instead of doing all the film festivals, I just entered it straight into the Oscars, and I'm actually, you know, we were shortlisted for an Academy Award in 2000 for this film. There was 22 shorts entered that year. 9 were chosen, and American Holocaust was part of the 9, and then 5 were nominated. And I, you know, the song at the end that I wrote, that came directly from sundancing. I'm a sundancer, and that came directly from sundancing. One night, you know, I was at Sundance, and one night it just flowed out. It was like 10 minutes, it just came out. So that's how the song came about. But I just feel that this conversation, we're still having this conversation, and now it's even like getting worse. And that's why I invited Gabe. It's like now we're disenrolling our own. And I mean, 20 years ago it was bad, but now it's really, really bad. And it just, this is not the way to go for our people. And as a mom and grandma, I just don't think this is the way to go. And so that really was at the heart of it, was the issue of who's Indian, who's not, who gets to say, what do we call ourselves? You know, they put us in these boxes. They put all of us in these boxes. We didn't create the borders. We're not 1%. You know, everyone keeps saying that we're 1%. Professors keep saying we're 1%. We're not. We did not create the borders. Yep. Got to stop perpetuating that lie. You know, we have more numbers than anyone right now, and we always have. We always have, and we always will.
Good on you for saying it. I was talking to my father about it, about the way that line, you know, the bottom of Texas got drawn across this massive group of indigenous people. You know, suddenly, you know, you're part of this country, you're part of that country. But the truth is, you know, if you've been living there all your life, you know, you didn't have any sense of why that line should be there. And of course, that's a story that's told all across the world to this day. It is. I was so struck in the film to hear reference to the fact that it goes on to this day. This film, The Condor and the Eagle, that among others, that screened this last year, that examined the plight of these indigenous heroes in South America who are trying to save the rainforest and stand up to the extraction industries that are just they're raping the land and the danger to their lives. You know, there was one story about this one woman. She called home and said, you know, I think I'm in trouble. This black pickup truck just came by with 5 or 6 guys in it. You know, I think I might need to get some help. And, you know, the truck turned around and brought out the weapons and killed her on the spot. And her crime was she stood up to the oil companies. So, you know, there's heroism despite all of this stuff to this day going on. And it's so important that we acknowledge it and support it with every fiber of our capacity. This is a time of profound difficulty and a time of profound opportunity. And we all need to keep our eyes open, keep our hopes up, be strong, keep our eye down the road of the future, and think good thoughts. You want to turn this over?
I'd like to hear from Oren and your thoughts on the film and where you think we're at today, and what does it mean to be Indian?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for the film, because it reminds people of realities that we live in, and the current stories that we have is the stories of this particular time, and every generation has their stories, and it goes back and it goes back, and this past March, I passed the 90-year mark.
Wow.
And in that time, first of all, I'm looking into this computer here, and I see this image of this old man that I don't know who he is. This old man sitting there looking at me, because I always kind of remember myself as more active or younger, but then it's just our times. So over these past years, when I became involved in discussion, I grew up at Onondaga, along with Joanne's family. They were right down the road. Her dad and her mom used to go to their house, and her brother was a very good friend of mine, one great lacrosse player. And he has a whole story. This goes on. But I grew up in the Onondaga Nation. My mother coming from the Seneca Nation, and my father from Onondaga, and he brought my mother over here. She came over here. I guess he didn't bring her over here. She came over here on her own early on. Very young, I think maybe 16 or 17 years old. And my dad snagged her up, and
yeah.
The result, of course, is we had 6 brothers and 1 sister. And I was the oldest, and I grew up here at Onondaga. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, all the 6 nations, which are Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora, matrilineal. We're matrilineal, and we follow the mother side. And that was established when our Confederacy was established many, many hundreds of years ago, probably 1,600 years ago. And that whole story of our nation, the Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee, French called us Iroquois, and the English call us 5 nations, and when Tuscarora joined, got 6 nations. And the proper name is Haudenosaunee. And we're an old confederation. I want to get to the subject, which is referencing the film, because I know we have a lot of speakers here, and I'm anxious to hear their observations on this film. But it stirred up a lot of memories in my past life. The Holocaust and the killing, the genocide of the indigenous people has not been told. Absolutely not been told. And from the time that we first engaged with them, you know, one time long ago, I have a friend, a strong friend. His name is, you probably know him, Harry Belafonte, and I are good friends. We've been friends for a long time, and we were driving from New York to, I think, Boston. We're on the road, and he said, you know, he says, you Indians, he says, it's your fault. He says, you brought them in. You're the ones that said, come and sit down, have a turkey, you know. And so he says, I said, well, you know, I got to admit that's what happened. And we didn't know at that time, long ago, exactly who they were. But our relationship in the Haudenosaunee long early on. We're East Coast people, and you know how Indians they move, they go everywhere. You got people come and visit you, you know, from Arizona or from California, and way back in those days they used to walk, you know, go in a canoe, whatever. But anyway, what I was saying is that in the Northeast here, we met our brother formally, somewhat formally, became formal after a point, but 1613, this ship came up this river. They now call the Hudson River, and our name for it is the river that runs in both directions, because that's what it does. That tide will go all the way to Albany. So if you're on a canoe or you're traveling south and you want to get down to what is now New York, and you hit that tide, you're not going to go anywhere. So you have the time you're going down with the tide's flow. Anyway, old times. We met the Dutch, and they wanted to trade, and we said, well, that's been watching you folks for a while now. Doesn't look like you're going to be going home any too soon. Why don't we make a discussion on relationship? We'll be seeing each other quite a bit here. So we set up a meeting with the Five Nation at that time, and we had a group called the Turo, Wampum. And it's basically recognizing our two peoples. That discussion took years to develop. It wasn't done, you know, one meeting, sit down and make the meeting. It's over a period of time. From 1613, probably 1625 or so, clarified our relationship. But what we said was, here's your ship, here's your people, and your many colors of people you have in this ship, and your religions. You've got all kinds of religions, and you have a big ship. You're this row. We had a blue, purple band of beads going down a white belt. That was you. Then over here was another row, purple beads going down the white belt. And they said, this is us. This is our canoe. And this is our people. This is our way of life. We don't have a lot of religions like you. We have one way of belief that seems to be everywhere. Everybody understands that. So we struck this agreement, and there was, we said we will hook our vessels together with three links. First link will be peace. The second link will be friends. And the third link will be as long as the sun rises in the east, as long as the rivers run downhill and as long as the grass grows green. That's where those words are. And I note that in many, many, many treaties after that, you will hear those words again and again. But what it's talking about is, well, the grass is still green out there. The rivers are still running downhill. And the sun came up this morning in the east and down here in the west. So it's still on. And this two-row belt was handed to the English after the Dutch, to the French. We didn't get to the Spanish with it. But anyway, many, many colonies and so forth have held that belt. And we still have the original belt. But what I'm saying is this relationship a long time ago. And during that from 1600 up to 1725, and at the Declaration of Independence, they called it, we were involved all that time. We were well known. We knew all your leaders. They knew us. And in 1775, they said to us, in 1744, in a meeting in Lancaster, you advised us to make a union like yours. We are now taking your advice. And this was the Continental Congress of the United States, 1775, on the eve of the Revolution. And they said, and they repeated the words of our Onondaga chief, Anasatego, who was talking to them at that time. And he said to them at that time, you know, you people are not going to amount to anything until you learn how to work together and be united. He said, look how we are. Look how respected we are. Look what authority we have from the union of the Haudenosaunee, the 5 nations at that time. Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca. Later, 1712, Tuscarora returned, and we brought them back into the Confederacy. So they made it to 6 nations. But anyway, what I'm saying is that we had this very strong Confederacy. So in 1775, they said to us, our fathers mistreated us, we're battling, we're going to have to defend ourselves. And they went on to tell the many problems they were having with him. And they said, we want you to join us in this battle. And our leaders said at that time, we know your father. We've been working with him for the past 300, 400 years. And we see this battle coming as a fight between father and son. And everyone knows very well that the last, not very wise to step into a family fight. We'll stand to the side. And they said, good. That was our second request. If you are not going to fight with us, don't fight against us. So we made a treaty of neutrality. We said, you battle it out and we'll deal with whatever happens after. But we said, our nations are split as well. We have thoughts on both sides. We know you. And we see it as a very, very tough time. Well, it's a long story, and I don't want to go through all that, but after the revolution, it didn't really conclude because they knew now the new United States could not penetrate into Canada, which was the stronghold of the English crown. And we had people up on both sides. We were all over the place up there, and Mohawks especially. But after that, we had this agreement, and they told us at that time, if you stay neutral, we're going to win, they said, and when we do, you will never have to fight again. We will fight your battles for you. That was a treaty of 1775, but people don't pay attention to those things anymore, but they're there, and we know it. And just very quickly, just moving into that relationship in 1983, President Reagan was renewing the draft, and our boys were getting draft notices, and they brought it to the council and said, "Hey, they're trying to draft us." They said, "Well, give us the letters. We'll send back to them. We'll tell them they can't do that." And so, after a time, the United States government requested a meeting. They said, "Can we have a discussion, about this issue?" They said, "We know that it isn't new, but we don't know where does it come from. Can we have a meeting?" So in 1983, now I'm talking about treaties going back to 1775. In 1983, we invited them up to the Longhouse at Onondaga, Selective Service, and the United States government. And they came in their black limousines and everything. And we had this discussion. We set the meeting on Mother's Day, May 1983. And that was their first opening statement. They said, "This is Mother's Day. This is a big celebration for us. Why did you set the meeting today?" And we said, "Every day is Mother's Day." and they they could, of course it is. Of course it is. The earth is female. The whole earth is female. And our nation is matrilineal. Our lineage follows the mother's side, not the father. That was set up by the peacemaker 1,600 years ago. And at that same time, when they set up our Constitution, the balance of governorship was between the men and the women, shared equally. And those leaders at that time, those 49 chiefs, you call them chiefs. Hoyane is our proper name for them, which means peacemaker. Chiefs, that's an English word, comes from Europe. And all the connotations with it comes from Europe. You got to know that. Anyway, we had this discussion with them, and we said, and we had the belts laid out, our wampum belts. The two-row belt was sitting there, the one I just told you about. And we had men behind each belt to make the story. And by the time we got to 1812, they said, okay. We asked you a question, you answered the question, and we will not draft your men. This is 1983 from a 1775 treaty. Which is why I'm making this point, is because treaties are very powerful. They want you to forget it. They want you to become Americans. If you become an American citizen, how can you have a treaty with yourself? Of course you can't. And that's why the Six Nations have made this standout, why we said, no, we are not citizens of the United States. We are who we are because we have our own treaties. We have and you recognize those treaties.
I was thinking when the irony of the United States government using your people as a model to draw this new system of government, and they got a lot of the values right, but they left out the one thing that has been haunting them ever since, in my opinion, and that is that they left out the part of the matrilineal. They left out of the part of the power of the matriarchs. I think
even more than that. In 1775, when they said we're going to make a union like yours, and they repeated all that, and we said we're glad to hear you do that. It was the rebels that were getting ready for a fight against the King of England. But we said we're glad to hear that. But where are your women?
Speaking of women, thank you, Oren. Speaking
thank you,
of
Oren.
women, I would love to introduce at this time Joanne. Joanne is well, we go back, God, our 20s singing and the community houses in San Francisco, and then we had invited Joanne to sing at our award ceremony last year, which standing room only. You can hear a pin drop, her voice, a cappella, and it was like an orchestra. And I want to introduce my dear friend, Joanne Shenandoah.
Thank you. I want to say, wow, Oren,
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
Kanien'kehá means I lift, how can I lift you up? Because, that's what we do for each other. And, oh, wow, where to start? This film was incredible. It's very intense, of course, and I applaud you for doing this film. But it's not new to the history of what we're accustomed to and what we have come to understand. And I just want to say, the whole COVID thing has kind of pushed us into a place where we really have to focus, really have to think about, okay, how do we want to make change for the next generations? Because that's what our responsibility is. We are responsible for the next 7 generations. And every next generation is responsible for the next 7 generations. So that to me is like about utmost importance. For 30 some years, I've been, doing music, and I love film. I love listening to film, actually, just for the music. So I watch the movies to hear what the filmmakers are going to put in the film for music. But more importantly than that is the stories and the wonderful depictions of what we have to offer as Native people have never been really genuinely told in such great ways. And that really frustrates me. I'm like, am I going to play an Italian next in a film? Because I was in a movie with Ron Perlman called The Last Winter, and I loved every second of it. I'm not kidding you. I went to Iceland. My family supported me to just leave for a month and go there, and I just loved it. It was just such a divine experiment for me, because I've always loved film. I mean, who doesn't, right? And especially during these times. So in 2015, just want to mention quickly, I became extremely ill. And the reason being, because in 2014, I went to work for the Attorney General, Eric Holder, for the Department of Justice as a volunteer for a whole year, listening to the stories, the testimonies as a co-chair for children exposed to violence across America. And that really just killed me. It really did. I just virtually was making my journey across the stars. And I feel like so blessed to still be here, because I have so much other work to do. I really do. I'm serious. I'm so excited, because I have, like, my bucket list is like, oh wow, I forgot about this, forgot about that, got to do this. Anyway, actually thinking about children living in cages right now, or children being separated from the parents, we need to come back to our original self. We need to realize how the beauty of seeds, the beauty of ceremony, the beauty of being kind, the beauty of, like, All lives matter, and Mother Earth matters, right? I mean, for me, that's everything. For me, that is just everything. And I am just blessed beyond belief to be here, to be giving thanks. I'm sorry to be emotional, but I just want to say I give total gratitude for life and all the blessings of life. You know, when we watch those beautiful seeds come out of the ground, when we see the smiles of babies, when we know that we have a mission to be able to bring forth peace, kindness, love, and generosity to all of our young and beautiful spirits being born into the world. So that's me.
I think that so many of us right now are more, those of us, let's say, who don't spend a lot of time thinking about how precious it is to wake up every morning and have another day, have another day here. I think because of what's going on, more of us than ever are thinking about that. And it does tend to make us feel very emotional and very grateful for our good fortune to still be here through all of this. The sense of the future being something that is no longer guaranteed, even to the degree we thought it was, is very compelling about bringing forth the emotion. And I feel it. And bless you, bless you.
Thank you. I'd like to add, I'm glad Gabe Gallanda is on this call because, our nation, on the United Nations, was one of the first nations to start disenrolling people. And I was one of the people who started the March for Democracy because we didn't have it here. We had no voice. We had no input into what was happening with our nation. And it's a mess. There's no doubt about it. We have to really face it. We have to seriously take control. Seriously make choices. Just don't stand back. Just don't not say anything. Just oh, well, isn't it too bad or whatever? Because a lot of people do that. They just say, oh, well, that's their problem or whatever. I mean, we are Indigenous peoples who have continued to survive for so many thousands and thousands of years. I mean, we are still here. Right? That's what Oren just said. We're still here. I love Oren. I love you. You're an amazing person. Thank God for you. Thank God for you. Thank Creator for you. I want to say that there comes a point where you have to stand up, awaken, be counted. The answers are watching over you. You know that they are because you've been given certain gifts and you continue to share them with the world. And if you are still here and you want to make a change and you want to make a difference, you can do it.
Yeah.
Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
And here we are. We have so many beautiful children amongst our midst right now, and all across Native America. If we stand strong, like Tecumseh said, we pull ourselves together, we can become strong again. We can be united. We can make change. We can make a difference.
I think it's an opportune time to remind those of us who normally disdain the political process of the United States, because so much of it seems so foolish and false and almost pathetic in a way, what it's turned into. And yet at a moment like this, actually having a change at the very top of the United States government, I think is utterly crucial in our capacity to do what needs to be done now, which is what we need to rebuild this place in a more sustainable way or our children's futures will be in so great a jeopardy. So I have friends who've been talking to me saying, "Oh, I'm so sad I can't get out of bed." You know, I'm saying, well, make yourself feel better. Get out of bed. Get involved in some kind of organization that is trying to make sure people don't get cheated out of their vote in November. You've got to start doing this now to make sure that you're registered, and make sure that your address is right, and make sure that you're on the rolls, and do the annoying work of actually protecting your right to actually say no to this administration, so that all of it.
To me, it's colonization. Okay, so we're talking about making a serious change so that each and every one of us can stand up, and we can make change. We can do this. Yeah. So here's something that I wanted to add, is that many years ago I was interviewed by Morley Safer in my living room, and he said, "So Joanne, what makes land sacred?" I was like, our ancestors are buried side by side. Their bones are in this ground. They're here. Our ancestors are here. They speak to us. They sing to us. They give me the songs. And tears started streaming down his cheeks. Mm. So, is it any clearer than that, right? Is it any clearer than that? I mean, we're part of this generation. My daughter has lost almost 30 friends to OD, to whatever, suicide. And I'm thinking, okay, now is the time for us to just say, let's stop. Let's make this change. Let's do something, okay? So that we don't have to suffer anymore, so that our grandchildren don't have to suffer, so that their children don't have to suffer. Let's make a beautiful change. Let's create peace. Let's give what our beautiful Haudenosaunee stories have to tell about creation, and about how we learn forgiveness, and like Oren's beautiful paintings, how Hiawatha came and he forgave Tadadaho for his evil acts. I mean, let's do this. It's time. The time is now.
Yes,
well,
yes.
This is perfect. This is perfect because we had a big victory today with the name change, right? There was a huge victory today, because we're still here. We're still, have people on the ground, fighting that good fight and showing up and saying, let's make the change. We're doing it. Today was this series is a big, big victory. This Holocaust series has never been done before. This conversation is getting to the root. Joanne, you just got to the root. You just gave us the root and the source, right? To acknowledge our ancestors are right here with us.
Yeah.
That's everything. That's everything. That is everything. And so moving forward, there's going to be a lot more victories, I have a feeling, as we move forward.
The signs are good.
Yeah, the signs are good. I am going to, because we want to have everyone out there if they want to ask all of us a question. So we're gonna move on to Gabe.
Yeah, Gabe. Thank you, Joanna, for
I love you
bringing him up. You help people navigate these complex legal situations. Some of them profoundly unjust, one of which is disenrollment. Many people tuning in may not know that in order to be recognized as a Native person in this country, you have to be enrolled, you have to have a number, as it were. You want to tell us more about that and about the work you're doing to address this issue?
Yeah, first let me thank everybody here on this panel and everyone at home watching. I want to especially thank Joanelle, and I want to give praise and thanks to Chief Lyons and Joanne, who I've admired for an awfully long time, for as long as I've been a lawyer. My name is Gabe Gallanda. I belong to the Round Valley Indian Confederation of Northern California, descending from the Nomlaki and Kanien'kehá tribes or bands of our confederation. And I make my home in Seattle, Washington, where I've lived for the last 20 years. And I've sort of reflected on the movie, having watched it last week and talked to Joanelle, and then now again, and this idea of, what makes us Indian. And I'm more concerned about the question, what makes us non-Indian? Because as the man said at the very end, we as Indigenous peoples have become more exclusionary than inclusionary. And we are trending more and more towards exclusion than we are inclusion. We are trending away from kinship and kinship modes of including our people, protecting our people, sustaining our people. And we are trending towards colonized ways of excluding and persecuting and throwing people away. So again, the question is today, what makes us non-Indian or non-Indigenous? And one is the words. We use words that aren't us, and that includes the word Indian or tribe. We use words like nation without full context, like Chief Lyons has for at least the word in the context of his peoples. But hey, you said it best. We were and are peoples. We didn't consider ourselves, with some exception, as governments or nations. We didn't call ourselves Indians. Columbus called us Indians because he thought he reached India when he arrived to what is now, the West Indies. They called us tribe because they thought somehow we were associated with tribes of Israel or the Middle East. We've used these words to describe ourselves for an awfully long time, and we've sort of lost sight of what makes us Indigenous by using words that are not ours. As we all know, most tribal names translate in traditional language to, like you said, the people, not necessarily the nation, certainly not Indian, certainly not tribe. And we have to get back to just a fundamental understanding of who we were or who we still are before it's too late. But Joan talked about some of the things that have been inflicted upon us over the last couple hundred years, and they are certainly highlighted by the movie. And they were brought about by treaties. Things like blood. We didn't identify ourselves by blood. That's how Europeans identifies themselves. That's how European scientists identified people, by a now debunked eugenics theory. But that word blood made its way into some of the early treaties of the 1800s. And of course, as the movie suggested, by one half Indian, that was a reference to the Indian ReOrganization Act of 1934, where unless you had 1/2 degree Indian blood, the federal government did not consider you an Indian. But now we have hundreds of our nations or our indigenous societies that use blood as the metric to include people. And it's not anything other than fiction, racial fiction. There's not percentages of blood running through our veins that correspond to what part of us is indigenous and the other part of us, to the extent we're of mixed ancestry, is non-indigenous. That was introduced to us by the colonizer, and we have now incorporated it as our own metric of belonging, and really it's a metric of exclusion. And you could go down the list. I think the most insidious thing happening to us today is per capita. We have monetized what it means to belong to an indigenous nation or society based on some percentage of casino revenues, or some percentage of CARES Act dollars, or some percentage of trust fund settlement dollars. And we are now making decisions to get rid of our own people so that those who remain will make more money per capita. We are making decisions to not enroll our children. We talk about 7 generations. We talk about the prophecy that Chief Lyons shared with us. There is no future as indigenous peoples without our children. And we are sitting here today under this regime of enrollment, which also is not ours, The United States started making lists of Indians, to my knowledge, in about 1790, around the times Chief Lyons is discussing. And we've been on lists and rolls and censuses ever since, and now we're enrolled. We didn't have lists to correspond to who belonged. But now we have these lists, and now we are adding people and taking people off of these lists. And even worse, we're not even putting our children on these lists, which today is how most of our nations or societies decide who belongs. So I am scared for our future. I'm admittedly cynical about our future, notwithstanding victories like we've seen at the Supreme Court last week and like we saw in Washington, D.C. today, because we have commodified ourselves, monetized ourselves, and now we are exiling and persecuting ourselves. And consider Joanne's situation. This movie, by the way, was ahead of its time. But before this movie was made, Joanne's voice was lost because she was persecuted by people who took over the Oneida Nation, desecrated the matrilineal and matriarchal traditions of that society or of that nation. And 25 years later, she is still voiceless. And the irony of one of the most beautiful voices in Indigenous America having had her voice stolen by a tyrant and his allies 25 years later. And then what happened to her and her family and her mother has now been repeated across Indian country by other politicians and other tyrants, leaves me again to ask, what makes us non-Indian? And it's that type of persecution. It's this idea of disenrollment, this notion of not including our children, excluding our relatives, getting caught up in racialized blood fiction that has me worried about our future. I don't say that to add worry to an already very worrisome time, but I am concerned. And I do hope that through conversations like this and movies like Joanelle's and stories like Joanne's and prophecies and history like what Chief Lyons is sharing with us, that perhaps we do have a better future ahead of us.
Wow, Gabe.
May it be true.
Thank you, Gabe.
Yes,
You're welcome.
thank you so much, Gabe, for bringing to this conversation what Joanne has gone through. There was a video that Joanne shared with me that I'll be addressing in about a month or so with some individuals, and I'd love to talk to you about that, Gabe. But in any event, this is just so needed, so very needed. Just gonna let that just soak in for a minute. Okay.
Shall I introduce Phillip?
Yes.
I want to say again, thank you for opening this session today. Phillip, I know that you and Lynette have a history of healing work with horses and plants and with reconnecting people to their traditional ways of life. Can you tell us about that calling, the way you were called to this work, and maybe speak about the transformations that you witnessed, or basically speak about whatever you feel moved to speak about?
I don't speak English that well, and I still fluent in my Cheyenne language. And I want to I want to thank each and every one of you for asking me to be a part of the panel here and the guests. I'm real honored to see Chief Orrin Lyons, It's a miracle that I can even be on the same event with him. I look up to him. And when I see him, I'm always asking him how it was and how it must have felt to actually meet the Ramdash and Muhammad Ali. And so he starts telling me stories, and I really enjoy him. Thank you for having me on. I just sitting here watching the movie, the historical facts and the mindset. And then I was thinking about what's happening today. And first of all, the movie, it talked about the effects, the statistics of the reservations and how we're all affected and we're all connected. And Warren mentioned that they gave Dennis Banks a couple hours to talk about from childhood to present time. And I know that we don't have that much time. And then I was told I only got 10 minutes to share what I know. And I've been sitting here baffled. If I share everything I know, what are we going to do with that other 9 minutes and 45 seconds? I was just here sitting thinking about all of that. And I'm not educated, but I've been educated. And that's where I think I got the hard knocks of wisdom. And I had good mother and I had good dad. And I come from real, well, my grandfathers were chiefs on both parents, and ceremonial people on both sides too. But I carried the name White Man. It's a Christian name that was given to my grandfather. One day I told my mother, I want to be named after my grandfather. His name is Horse Roads. And my mother said, why is that? No, I don't like White Man. The name that they gave my grandfather, the Christians, when they came and translated the Indian name to English. Because his mother, Wanha, that's a peace woman, burns away badness. She was raped, and my grandfather was half-breed, and he grew up around Fort Laramie. And he learned English and he learned Cheyenne, and he said it was a real tough time. They go hungry, and he managed to survive. He was about 3 years old. His Wounded Knee Massacre, one of my grandfather's white antelope, they castrated him. And they gave Black Kettle and other chiefs flags when they took him to Washington to fly him over their lodges to show that they were a peaceful village. And my grandfather managed to escape near-death experience by the hand of his stepfather. Stepfather didn't like him. When he was standing there crying when the soldiers attacked. His stepfather said, "Leave him. He's one of them anyway." But his mother started running back. And then for some reason, the stepfather on horseback ran back and reached down and grabbed my grandfather as he was crying and reaching for him, and stuck his thumb right in my grandfather's mouth and ripped his face. And somehow, some way, my mother died around the sacred Black Hills, and his his aunt raised him, and she was pushed into that hole after she was killed at the Wounded Knee Massacre. My grandfather saw the stepmother, be buried there in that hole also too. And they were incarcerated at Fort Kill in Miles City. And under Congressional Act, they gave us another reservation, prison colony, Ton River Agency, that we call our home now. And my grandparents, they talked to me in a good way, tell me history and stories. Now, I had another grandmother, she was real strong Mennonite. And my mother, she was sent off to Tacoma, Washington to be tested for an illness. And we started suffering the effects of oppressed conditions. And my grandfather, he tell me stories. One of my grandfathers was sent back east with the 101 Ranch Rodeo. He used to ride bucking horses. My grandfather rode bucking horses and grew up around horses. And when my parents both got ill, I started returning back to our ceremonies. And I started realizing the intoxication, the many forms of it, codependency, trying to exert power where you have none, always victim-minded, crying out, asking out, self-sabotage. The effects, the advocates of oppression. But yeah, that comes from a real strong lineage of prayerful, spiritual warriors and leaders. A warrior doesn't bring fight, turmoil, duality to the village. A warrior brings security, calmness, confidence to the village. And a chief doesn't lead from the top down or from the front. Comes from a whole higher level of thought process that our prophets brought to our people. The Cheyenne were known with their higher level of consciousness and awareness through their sacred covenant gifts. The emotions and the feelings and the thoughts, they come from your environment. In this language that we're speaking, My language doesn't have conjunctions. My language ain't convoluted. I had to first sober up. I had to look at myself before I could even change the world or attempt to change it. I had to look at myself first. Na warve homas, na niman. Na we understand do what stuff. I had to quit drinking. I had to look at myself first. Before I can change the world, I got to change my thoughts and my connection, how I commune with Mother Earth. We all have creation stories as Native people, how we're connected to the stars, astrology, how we're connected to Mother Earth, air, land, and water, how we are a co-creator, how we are all one, and how our mother, the creator, created the 4 sacred colors, the 4 sacred directions, the 4 seasons. This human experience, it just about put you under good hypnosis that we're all separate, but or spiritual connection. It reminds us that we're spirits having human experience and that we're all connected. And this language that we're speaking today is pitiful. There is a place, there is a field beyond rightness and wrongness. I will be waiting for you there. That's what I heard one day. That's that place that my grandmother, my grandfathers talked about. It's waiting for us, but you're gonna have to sober up and you have to reconnect to your spirit that's inside all of us. Let's not look at what we got in each other, our projections. What we see in each other is usually what we dislike in ourselves. That's the advocates of oppression. The convoluted mindset of this language, it puts you in a hypnosis, or become like sheep, an unreflecting herd. The IQ is the furthest away from spiritual intelligence. It won't allow you to go through emotional intelligence, humility, humbleness, vulnerability, spirit, because you're too smart, using that convoluted language to try to justify your rightness and wrongness. That's not who we are. We're much more than our thoughts. I love each and every one of you guys, and there's nothing you guys can do about it.
Is it possible? Is it possible, Phillip?
It took a long journey to get here where I'm at. Thank you.
For you, potentially a song, I would love to do that. And all those who may be listening.
What was that again?
I would love
to offer
you a song of healing. Is that okay?
Yes. Yes.
And to all those who may be listening, because in our cosmology, in our DNA, water holds memory. So we have the memory of our ancestors. And whenever I sing a song, I ask for my ancestors to join me. It's just who I am and kind of crazy. But anyway, that's what I do. And I loved your words. And I hear your pain and your suffering and the suffering of those who've gone before you. Trust me, I've been there. I know it. I know it deeply. I know it so deeply that I was making that journey across the stars. I have heard testimony from thousands of Native people across the country who have suffered intensely for the injustices that we've suffered. I have personally held testimony. But I want to offer you this song because I think it's a great thing to do, if that's okay. And the words mean this. May there be peace to all people around the world. Let our minds be one. We should hold together the promise of peace and joy and enlightenment and beauty of the wonderful Mother Earth, what she gives to us and what she will give to our children. So we can do this. This is possible. It is possible. And I know as Iroquois people, we believe this. This is part of our genuine nature. This is who we are. So I just want to offer you this song. I hope you, it will help to, release some of the tension that you're feeling too. And it goes like this. Skana Aiziwan Antonio Hage Skana Aiziwan Antonio Hage Ahun Jiguego Ahun Jiguego Ungwa Nigola Ungwa Nigola Skana Aiziwan Antonio Hage Skana Aiziwan Antonio Hage Ahun Jiguego Ahun Jiguego Ungwa Nigola Ungwa Nigola Skana Aiziwan Antonio Hage Skana Aiziwan Antonio Hage Ahun Jiguego Ahun Jiguego Ungwa Nigola Ungwa Nigola Skana Aiziwan Antonio Hage Skana Aiziwan Antonio Hage Ahun Jiguego Ahun Jiguego Ungwa Nigola Ungwa Nigola.
One last thing, we developed the medicine wheel model. It's beyond horsemanship. And horses, they're energy, and we're energy. In the circle of life, what goes around comes around. And in the circle of life, there's no sides. And we have invisible lines all around us. We're like a vortex. And there's a horizontal and vertical in the center in the circle. And the Creator shows his love for diversity. Without the understanding of the diversity, there's no unity. And without the understanding of unity, there's no understanding of self and how we're all connected. And then at the same time, we're all unique. Our fingerprints tells us that we all have a gift. And Cheyennes, they're not matriarch or they have, each man and woman have a responsibility. Matter of fact, we don't even believe in equality, because equality, woman would be a step downward or backwards. We all have big responsibilities in front of us, and we got to get ourselves well first, and change yourself first, and I'll guarantee you the world around you will be changed. Thank you.
Wow. Well, I'd like to, I'm just so overwhelmed and feel really, I don't have an English word for it. I just want to just say this has been a really blessed opportunity. I'm very grateful for all of you, and we're running a little over time. So I'd like to address one quick question. If everyone could just give 2 sentences, because it is supposed to be a 2-hour show, and I don't want to, let's see. I'm getting different messages here. Let's see. In 2 sentences, if we could do this really quickly, what would be a win-win community partnership between the first peoples of this part of the world and those have settled here from other parts of the world?
I can start.
That's a question from the audience.
Okay, I can start.
Okay, 2 sentences.
7 generations ago, my ancestor, who died and lived here where I live, 110 years old, he passed away. He said, it's not simply enough to think peace. We must be peace. That's it.
Yeah. Gabe?
We as Indigenous peoples are hesitant to speak of other societies or nations, even when they're persecuting their own people. And in these days, non-Indigenous peoples are even more hesitant to speak out about injustice that we are inflicting upon ourselves. But at the risk of quoting Martin Luther King, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so I would ask our non-Indigenous allies to help speak out against the persecution that the colonized members of our own families and our own societies are now causing our peoples. It is greater than us as Indigenous peoples, in my estimation. It is colonization and capitalization and government and forces that are the strongest in the history of the known world. And I fear that we are suffering under them and at great risk as a result of those things. So I would ask for our non-Indigenous allies to speak up in the face of the persecution that we are causing ourselves and help us resolve that.
Thank you, Gabe. Oren?
the human beings are one species. We come in all colors, but we're brothers and sisters, no matter what color we are. We're like dogs. We come in all sizes and shapes and colors, but we're one species. That has to be recognized. We're family. And we have a huge responsibility that, to carry on to the seventh generation, which was mentioned, which is our fundamental process. And so it never take hope from the people, and it's not over yet. And I'll go back to one of my favorite stages of history and so forth. I like his statements, and I use them every now and then. And that is Yogi Berra. You know Yogi Berra,
Oh yeah,
the Yankee baseball player, the catcher. He's great. Well, I'm going to go back to his last words, and I agree with it. It ain't over till it's over.
Thank you.
yes, yes.
Phil? Phil?
Gee, I don't know if I can outdo Yogi Bear.
I know.
I think that when the Creator first created all of life, and Cheyennes, they don't have a word for animal. They call them Hawan. And they're gods. And they still live by the original instructions. The eagle, the salmon, they still follow the original instructions that they were given. And us guys, the two-legged, we need ceremony. We need those animal ceremonies to remind us that we were given original instructions also too. And I think that it's going to take shock after shock after shock to bring out compassion and mercy and this linear language, this corner line thinking, this journey that we'll have to take from here to here. This is a part of it. It's a human experience. And Custer, when he made relatives with my grandfathers, they told him that, don't ever double cross the Cheyennes. That's you in the ash that he rubbed in with his right boot. There's going to be nothing left of you. And right now, there's a war on Mother Earth. And man, they got to stop war. Otherwise, war will stop man. I think that's what Martin Luther King said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, each of you. So moving to be able to listen to everyone speak today. I'm very grateful that got to be a part of it. I want to say that we need to encourage each and every person who's tuned in to consider joining us to become part of this community by making a contribution. Times are hard for all of us right now, but we wouldn't ask if it weren't necessary. The link is right there on the card. You know, be mindful, please, that we depend on community support, and we need to keep programs like this alive and supported, especially now, not only during the pandemic, but during this long overdue moment of historical reckoning. I think we've spoken about it today, it's just almost amazing to me that we actually get to finally say it, but there's an opening now. And in this opening, we've seen in the last few days alone, this mandate to stop the oil of the Dakota Access Pipeline. We've seen that. That was overdue. It was about to happen in September of 2016, and then history turned against us for a while. But it's again about to happen, and I don't believe that the scrutiny of that permitting process and the violation of the treaties that let that oil start to flow under the current administration's wishes, I don't think that the scrutiny is gonna hold up. I think it's gonna stop. You got that. You got this recognition by the Supreme Court that half of Oklahoma actually belongs to the Muskogee Nation. After 87 years, you got the Redskins deciding that that's a terrible word to have for their name of their team. These are things that were not even imaginable at the beginning of the year, as much as we've been pushing against it, you know. This is a moment. So we need people to support us, to reach out and be a part of building community. We're going to be under tremendous pressure to try to survive all this. We need to band together. So if you can help us, please help us. Any amount is useful. Don't be feeling bad if you can't donate much. Just give what you can, if you will, and we will be so grateful for it. Thank you in advance for considering it. And Joanelle, I'll give it to you to bring us home.
Okay. So I want to talk to you about this campaign. It's really the 25th anniversary of Red Nation Celebration Institute. And being the longest standing Native arts and cultural nonprofit in the city of LA, we provide so much groundbreaking initiative and programs to the world, from our film festival to working with youth, that we've go all over the reservations and work with our youth for many, many years. And so with this series that we're doing now, this is season 1, and this is episode 1. And each season will have 5 episodes. And what we have developed with the educators in our partnerships with USC, we have a Native Study Center, and you could visit it on our site, rednationtv.com. And we have a curriculum that's been developed and is continuing to be developed from K to 12 and for college. And so we're going to take these episodes and these seasons and turn them into study guides, programs for future generations. When I made this film 20 years ago, people had reached out to me to do that with the film. And here we are 20 years later, and that vision is being realized. I encourage you, if you can, to keep the arts alive and support our 25th anniversary and this educational campaign and this mission that we're on. I do want to acknowledge our ancestors that were in this film that are no longer with us, and that's Phil Lucas, Adam, Grandpa Wallace Black Elk, Mildred Clayhorn, and Rui. All of them, you know, were very dear to me, and I love them very much. But they're here with us right now, and I know that all of them are feeling what we're doing and supporting what we're doing. I want to thank each and every one of you for viewing this series that are out there. And especially I want to thank our guests and my friends, Oren Lyons and Gabe and Phillip and Joanne. I love you all. And you always have my back, and I love you. I love you very much.
Love you too, sister.
And I want to thank all of our production team. There are a lot of people behind the scenes here helping us do this. So I want to thank all of you. I encourage you to come back August 10th. It's a Monday, a month from now, with episode 2. And we're going to talk about voting and some special other programming that we have lined up. You're going to have to tune in to find out what that is. But I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle.